He was using his life to buy my survival. After he died, I held his funeral without crying or making a fuss. I found a diary in his study, which was full of his love for me. On the day of his burial, I chose to end my life so that he would not be alone on the road to the underworld. Unexpectedly, God gave me another chance. This time I will protect him well and avoid that car accident. We can love each other for 100 years. I held my breath and looked at the water expectantly. When I was about to give up, the sound of breaking water rang in my ears. Brian, who was 20 years younger, appeared in front of me. I reached out to him in surprise. He swam straight towards me. Just when our fingertips were about to touch, he brushed past me with a cold face and swam behind me. My smile froze on my face. The strength that surged up in my body dissipated instantly.
Why?
Looking at Brian's resolute back, I suddenly remembered that in the last life, the educated youth Diana and I had an argument about cutting grass for pigs. She was so angry that she pushed me into the water. I was not a pushover either. I pulled her hard before falling into the water. My body became heavier and heavier, and my consciousness gradually blurred. I sank uncontrollably to the bottom of the lake. Brian didn't even look at me. He carefully hugged Diana and swam up. My chest was about to explode because of suffocation. Just when I thought I was going to die here today, someone rushed into the river and fished me out. I lay on the riverbank in a mess. My eyes were red, and I was coughing desperately. I was 2 meters away. Brian carefully put his coat on the wet back of Diana and gently patted her back to help her spit out the water. We smiled at each other, and I didn't know what we were talking about. But in the last life, after he fished me out, he didn't give me his coat. At that time, I was soaked all over, revealing my curves. There were many bachelors in the village. When they surrounded me, they looked at me with obscene and vulgar eyes, wishing they could strip me naked. My heart ached, as if it was torn in half by someone, and it hurt so much. Could it be that my rebirth changed what was going to happen in the last life? I pursed my lips and stared at Brian. At this moment, he raised his head and suddenly met my gaze. He walked towards me step by step. He pinched my arm hard. Ignoring my struggle, he dragged me towards Diana. My knees were scraped and bleeding on the ground, and my arm was twisted with bruises by him. But he seemed to see nothing. With a sullen face, he apologized. "Who told you to pull her into the water?" I subconsciously opened my mouth to explain, but froze when I saw the movements of his hands. A chill rose from the soles of my feet and spread to my whole body. I felt as if I had fallen into an ice cellar, and my whole body began to tremble. Brian's right hand hung at his side, and his index finger tapped his waist again and again. This was a habit he developed when he was doing business in his previous life. Whenever he became impatient, he would subconsciously make this move. It turned out that he had also been reborn. I sat on the ground in a daze, forgetting to breathe. The memories of my previous life appeared in my mind again. After I fell into the water, Brian quickly rushed into the water to rescue me. At that time, I was drowning and holding onto the corner of his clothes so tightly that I forgot to let go. At that time, he stared at the water surface, trying to pry my hands open, but before he could pry me open, Diana was rescued by others. So, in his previous life, he rescued the wrong person. It turns out that the one he liked from the beginning was Diana. When Brian saw that I didn't say anything for a long time, he pressed my head down and forced me to kowtow to Diana to apologize. I had no strength in my body, and my face was pale. I asked unwillingly, "What am I apologizing for?" Diana pursed her lips and tears fell from her eyes. She looked aggrieved. "If you hadn't pulled me into the water, how could I have almost drowned?" As soon as the words fell, the fire in Brian's eyes seemed to be erupting. Brian in this life seemed to have become a different person. Since he rescued Diana, his malice and disgust towards me were all on his face. That was also the case. After he rescued me in the last life, he didn't have a chance to talk to Diana at all. In this life, he had just rescued Diana. I'm afraid Diana told him that I was the one who pulled her into the water. No wonder she was dissatisfied with me. I smiled sarcastically. "You were lazy when you were picking pig grass and threw all the work to me. You got angry and pushed me after saying a few words to you. If you hadn't pushed me into the water first, how could I have pulled you?" Diana's face turned pale. Her body trembled even more violently. Brian saw her pitiful look and spoke in a cold tone. She was not that kind of person. You dragged others into the water and slandered others. Ellie, how can you be so vicious? This time it was Comrade Yao. Diana who is in trouble. So, who will it be next time? Brian deliberately raised his voice. The villagers who rushed over naturally heard his words. They looked at me with contempt and anger. The girl from the Ellie family has such a bad heart. She must be jealous of the educated youth and deliberately wanted to harm others. She almost caused a death. What a vicious mind. The boy from the Brian family is right. She may harm us next time. How can such a person stay in the village? Drive her out. In this era, rumors can kill a person. Brian knew that his words could force me to death, but he still chose to do this for Diana's sake. No wonder he stopped me from calling an ambulance before he died, when he had time to call for an ambulance. It turned out that he had not married the person he loved, and he had already made up his mind to die. An indescribable bitterness surged in my heart. My eyes were red. I spoke stubbornly. She was the one who pushed me into the water first. Brian's face was gloomy, and he looked intimidating without even getting angry. How dare you lie to me? I saw with my own eyes when I just arrived that it was you who pulled her into the water. I sneered, and it felt like a needle was piercing my throat. It hurt so much that I couldn't speak. The villagers around me exclaimed. They picked up stones on the ground and threw them at me. The stones scratched my cheeks, leaving streaks of blood. I closed my eyes in despair, and tears streamed down my cheeks. I didn't know how to prove my innocence. Suddenly a voice came from behind. Brian, you really saw it with your own eyes? You don't even think twice before you lie. I looked back and saw clearly who saved me. Diana's husband in her previous life, Nathan, a famous gangster in the village. He saved Diana in her previous life. Diana looked down on him, but she was saved by Nathan, so she had no choice but to marry Nathan. Not long after they got married, Nathan went to join the army. He was gone for 3 years. Later, news came back that he had passed away in an accident. Nathan wrung out his clothes and put them on me, then came over to me in a nonchalant manner. If I hadn't saved her just now, she would have drowned in the river. A person who can't swim doesn't even want his own life to harm you. Brian, you grown man lied to frame a woman. Aren't you ashamed? Brian's face turned red. He didn't expect someone to stand up at this time. Seeing that something was wrong, Diana fainted with her eyes rolled back. After I was sent home by the village aunt, I didn't go out for half a month. My family had already decided on the marriage between Nathan and me, and Brian was with Diana as he wished. But Diana said that there must be 3 turns and 1 ring, the bicycle must be Phoenix brand, and the gift money must be 500. In the last life, my family only asked for 120 as a betrothal gift, and my mother said that after the marriage, the money would be returned to us so that we could live on our own. But Brian said that his family was poor and couldn't afford so much, and finally reduced it to 80. In this life, Brian didn't think Diana's request was rude, but instead said that he would collect the betrothal gift for her within a month. I know the situation at Brian's home very well. Let's not talk about the 3 turns and 1 ring. How could he possibly come up with 500? Then I thought of something and had a bad feeling in my heart. In the previous life, at this time, the pastry factory in the neighboring city and the pastry factory in our city maliciously bid against each other and always launched new pastries before the pastry factory in our city. Everyone knew that there was a spy inside the pastry factory in our city, but they couldn't find out who it was. The pastry factory in the city directly issued a notice that as long as someone came up with a new idea to make a new pastry and let the pastry factory come back to life, there would be a bonus of 1,000 yuan and a small watch. The more I thought about it, the more frightened I became. I asked Nathan to help me take the pastry materials and rushed to the city. Before I arrived at the pastry factory, I smelled a sweet and greasy aroma. It was so delicious. Brian, this kid has something in his brain. He can actually come up with this flavor of mooncake. At first, I couldn't get used to it, but I didn't expect it to become more and more fragrant the more I ate. Wow, this champion must be him. The people around were holding small pieces of mooncakes in their hands and tasting them, exclaiming in admiration. My heart sank, and when I saw what they had in their hands, my pupils suddenly shrank. Sure enough, in this era, mooncakes were only sweet. The core was mostly made of white sugar. The slightly more luxurious ones would sprinkle some sesame seeds on the surface. At that time, I had a sudden idea and wanted to make a salty one. I brought a few duck eggs to the scene. Unexpectedly, the duck egg yolk mooncake became the champion. Later, I gave the 1,000 yuan to Brian as the startup capital for his business. Unexpectedly, in this life, he directly plagiarized my idea. Brian also saw me, and a mocking arc appeared at the corner of his mouth. He emphasized that this recipe was the one I racked my brains for at home for half a month to come up with. Only I know the formula. As long as everyone likes it, my hard work will not be in vain. His words inspired the people around him to applaud again. He looked at Diana beside him with a lingering look. "Diana, I said I would give you the best." Diana blushed and hooked his palm with her fingers as if unintentionally. Suddenly, Brian's eyes were as hot as if he wanted to eat her. Nathan, who was following behind me, sneered, "Put the pastry materials in your hand on the table. Don't be happy too soon. Many people haven't finished their products yet. How do you know that the champion must be you?" Brian didn't care. When he saw me taking out the pastry materials one by one, he deliberately asked in confusion, "Hey, why are the ingredients in this recipe the same as mine?" This was also heard by the people around me. Everyone looked at the white sugar, duck egg yolks, peanut oil, and flour in my hand and fell into deep thought. No, she also wants to make duck egg yolk mooncakes. Doesn't that mean her products are the same as Brian's? Didn't Brian say that this was the recipe he had been thinking about for more than half a month? Then this woman. Diana deliberately lowered her voice so that everyone around her could hear her words. "Ellie, I know you have always liked Brian. He saved me, and you have always been dissatisfied. But you can't ruin your reputation like this. Thieves will be arrested and sent to labor reform." Brian protected Diana and looked at me with disdain. "Ellie, don't say you didn't steal my idea. We are from the same village. You will inevitably pass by our house on a daily basis. Who knows when you sneaked in and stole the recipe? I won't compete with a thief. Today, either she or I will leave." Several old masters in the pastry factory immediately panicked. The factory director hasn't arrived yet and the champion is about to leave. How are they going to explain to the factory director later? An old master came up and grabbed me and pushed me out. "Get out, get out, get out. We don't welcome thieves here." Nathan hurriedly supported me and glared at them. He was about to speak, but I stopped him. I put all the remaining materials in the bag on the table and looked at them with amusement. "Who said I only made this one mooncake today?" The people around me saw that I was confident, so many people shut up and wanted to see what I could make. But there were still many people laughing. Is she crazy? She stole someone else's recipe and still wants to make up for it. There is more than one person. She is bragging too much. Our factory has been poor in these years. She has developed 5 new pastries, but she still wants to get rich overnight. How shameless. How dare a thief be so arrogant? Nathan was gritting his teeth beside me. I smiled at him to comfort him and started to make pastries. Brian remembered my salted egg yolk mooncake recipe because he needed the bonus as the startup capital for his business. Later, when I opened my own pastry shop, he never set foot in my shop. He would only come to the shop to sit down and play the emotional card when he needed me to support him financially. It can be said that in his previous life, he was able to run a listed company entirely by sucking my blood and my advice behind his back. He has no talent for business. I have told him more than once that competitors must be carefully selected, but he never discusses it with me. He will only admit his mistakes to me when he loses money and asks me to make decisions to help him fill the loopholes. I weighed the dough in my hand and started kneading the skin directly. After a while, a crystal-clear dough skin came out in my hand. The pastry factory lent the machine to the contestants. I asked Nathan to watch the ingredients on the table and enter the pastry factory to prepare to start baking the inner core. When I came out again, sweat was already oozing from Brian's forehead. I sneered and combined the remaining materials into a few more recipes. After more than an hour, my finished product came out. It's the snow skin mooncakes from Guangzhou. There are also salted egg yolk mooncakes. I also made a not very standard snow mignon. At this time, cream needs to be imported and it's not available in the city yet. I made some sour and sweet ones and used tomato sauce as the core of the snow mignon. I cut the hand movement into 5 pieces and distributed them to several pastry factory masters on the scene, leaving one for the factory director. The people around smelled the fragrance and began to swallow their saliva. She is really good at it. Judging from the fragrance, she must be an expert. So, what if she is an expert? She is still a thief. She stole someone else's recipe. That's not necessarily the case. You just saw her pinching technique. There is no need to weigh it at all. She pinched it quickly and accurately. I saw that Brian was stumbling when he was making it just now. He didn't look like he could make pastries. Brian also heard this. His face was livid and his voice was angry. This is the recipe I carefully prepared. I haven't made it many times. Who can be willing to make ingredients like this at home? Isn't it normal that I am not familiar with it? This is what I thought. Seeing his serious look, everyone around him shut up, but I don't know what he was thinking in his heart. Diana stared at me unwillingly. It was just a smell, but it was hard to tell how it tasted. Everyone had eaten the mooncakes that Brian had just made. You know how it tasted. Several pastry factory chefs ignored their quarrel and took the few mooncakes I had cut and stuffed them into their mouths. The more they ate, the brighter their eyes became. It was delicious, not bad. This one is called snow skin mooncake. The outside is sticky, very similar to snow or something, but different. It's delicious, delicious. The salted egg yolk one is not bad either. Her recipe seems to be different from the one just now. That one was a bit too salty. This one has a moderate saltiness and a hint of sweetness. Sugar is added. I nodded. Brian only knows how to make salty ones, but doesn't know that the saltiness and sweetness need to be adjusted to a ratio that blends with each other. Brian's eyes were cold. I didn't accept it. She just stole my recipe and then improved it. But the recipe was mine from the beginning. Her pastry should also belong to me. I think it's a bit ironic. Brian threw away his moral bottom line for the bonus. Thinking of the scene when he was reborn, I didn't find it strange anymore. He could frame me for Diana. What's so strange about doing this now? I laughed sarcastically. You said I stole your formula. Where is the evidence? Diana rushed over and grabbed my hand, looking worried. Ching man, although we have had conflicts, I can't watch you go astray. When Brother Brian was developing this formula, I was always by his side. How can you say this with a clear conscience? The formula was not stolen by you. Nathan laughed disdainfully and pushed her away. You can testify for Brian, and I can testify for Man as well. She hasn't been out of the house at all in the past half-month, so how could she go to your house to steal your formula? Not to mention whether she went out or not. Your house is at the easternmost end of the village, and her house is at the westernmost end. She has to pass 4 or 5 households to get to your house. Why don't we ask someone if anyone has seen Man go to your house in the past half-month? Brian's eyes flashed with a trace of panic, which disappeared in a flash. He clenched his hands into fists, and a wry smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. That's all. Just think of it as something you figured out yourself. That's right. Since you deliberately wanted to steal my formula, how could you leave any evidence? Who knows, maybe he took advantage of no one at home and no one saw you and ran to my house to steal it. Forget it. I'll just have bad luck. The people around who were still a little hesitant couldn't help but sympathize with him when they heard what he said, and they all shouted for me to get out. Suddenly, someone shouted, "The director is here." The director of the pastry factory walked over, his eyes moving between me and Brian. He didn't say anything but picked up the pastries I made and the mooncakes made by Brian and tasted them one by one. The surroundings fell into silence, and everyone was waiting for his result. He coughed and smiled kindly. Comrade Ellie's mooncakes are indeed more delicious. As for Comrade Brian's mooncakes, they also have their own peculiarities. I raised my eyebrows and listened quietly to the director's words. I had already made up my mind. Sure enough, the next second the director announced the result. The bonus belongs to Comrade Ellie. The taste of her cakes is indeed good, and the 3 cakes she took out have their own characteristics. Our factory has decided to take away all 3 of her recipes. Comrade Ellie, come and talk to me about the following matters later. Brian's chest kept rising and falling. It was obvious that he was very angry. He stared at me as if he could cut flesh from me. I don't accept it. The recipe is mine. The factory director smiled, and his tone was still nonchalant. Don't worry. As for Comrade Brian, you also have a prize. I don't care who copied, who's among you. Whoever makes it better is the hard truth. Just like the factory in the next city has copied our pastries for 3 consecutive months. So what? People still buy theirs, because theirs is better than ours. I can make an exception and admit you as an employee of our factory. How about it? Oh, by the way, plus a bonus of 200 yuan. A storm was brewing in Brian's eyes, and his face was gloomy, but he still nodded. He no longer had the 1,000 yuan bonus, and he couldn't even lose the 200 yuan. The next day, Brian's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Why are you here? Only employees in the factory can enter. Who asked you to come? Get out. I pushed him away and shook my sleeves impatiently. Of course, the factory director invited me here. Brian pinched my arm tightly. He dragged me out. Get out. What are you bragging about? At the critical moment, it was the factory director who ran out to stop him. Brian, what are you doing? I invited Comrade Ellie to our factory for guidance. Brian stopped moving. His eyes were like poison. I was too lazy to pay attention to him. I turned around and went into the office with the factory director. After receiving the bonus yesterday, the factory director discussed with me and asked me if I could join their factory. I refused. I still have my own plans in the future, but the conditions offered by the factory director are tempting. I promised him that I could come to the factory for guidance in March, April, and May and develop new cakes with the employees of their factory. The salary I get is the same as other employees. I help the factory research new fried dough twist recipes. This time is the same. Make 2 flavors, sweet and salty, but the ratio of sugar still needs to be constantly trial and error. I am very busy here. After returning home, I can still hear the gossip that my mother asked about. Since Brian lost to me last time, Diana has been arguing with Brian, saying that he is useless, not a man, and can't even beat a woman. I don't know which sentence hurt Brian's nerves. The two had a big quarrel, and Diana immediately proposed to break up with him and not get married. Brian was done. In order to make Diana happy, he not only gave Diana the 200 yuan bonus given to him by the factory director, but also emptied his family's savings to buy her a small watch and a bicycle. It was just that Brian's mother was sick at home a few days ago, and he didn't have the money to take his mother to the city for treatment. In the end, he still found a barefoot doctor to prescribe medicine. Nathan and I made an appointment to have dinner at the state-owned restaurant on the weekend. He had something urgent to do, so he asked me to order the dishes first. As soon as I sat down, I found that the person sitting at the next table was Diana, but the person next to her was not Brian. It looked like the two of them were on a blind date. Diana naturally saw me, her face immediately sank, and she was about to leave with the other person. Who knew that Brian suddenly rushed in, and when he saw Diana holding another man's hand, he was so angry that his eyes turned red, and he directly wrestled with that man. In order to avoid being involved, I retreated to the side early. The tables and chairs in the state-owned restaurant were smashed to pieces. The man ran away. Brian had bruises on his face and body, and 2 lines of blood flowed from his nose. He grabbed Diana's collar fiercely. "What are you doing here today? Didn't you say you would marry me?" Diana was not afraid at all, and stepped on Brian. "It was you who said you would give me 500 betrothal gifts and 3 turns and 1 ring. If you can't do it, naturally someone else can do it." Brian was anxious. He hurriedly grabbed Diana and said, "Wait for me for a while. I can get it together soon." I don't know if Diana agreed or not. He snorted and left. Brian also wanted to follow. The owner of the state-owned restaurant directly grabbed him and asked him to pay. After taking out the money in his pocket, Brian's face became even uglier. When he raised his head and saw me, the venom in his eyes seemed to be overflowing. "Why are you here? You just saw it. Ellie, you vicious woman, dare to follow me. If you hadn't stolen my formula, how could I lose to you?" He made Diana so angry. There was madness in his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was still blaming me for my faults. I whispered lunatic and couldn't help but find it ridiculous. This kind of person would only find the faults of others from beginning to end. I turned around and was about to leave, but I heard Nathan's voice in the distance. "Be careful." The severe pain spread from the back of my head. My eyes went black, and I fainted. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in the hospital. Nathan was guarding me next to me. His eyes were full of red bloodshot. When he saw me wake up, he smiled brightly. "You woke up, it's all my fault. If I had gone earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Don't worry, I will make that beast pay the price." After saying that, he fainted. I sighed and sorted out my thoughts. Brian hit me with a bench. I was unconscious for 3 days. Nathan stayed by my side for 3 days without eating or drinking. My parents were so scared that they were out of their minds. What surprised me was that the factory director didn't come to see me during this period. I have already studied the ratio of fried dough twist. In order to compete with the neighboring city, this period of time is the critical moment. Logically, when he knew the news of my hospitalization, he should come to express his condolences and ask about the progress of the ratio. I had a bad feeling, so I asked my parents to keep an eye on Nathan, and then I went to the pastry factory. Along the way, everyone looked at me with contempt and disdain. In the factory director's office, the factory director patted Brian on the shoulder with a friendly look on his face and said, "You did a good job this time, Brian. I'll give you a raise later." Brian looked very proud and said, "It's my honor to share the worries of the factory." "Factory director, I told you before that Ellie stole my recipe, but she got lucky once, and the ratio she mixed was a little tastier than mine. Take a look at this time." I pushed the door and walked in. When I saw the ratio method on the notebook on the table, I laughed angrily. "Brian, you entered my office and stole my recipe." In order to facilitate my research and development, the factory director specially found an empty office in the factory as a place for me to rest. After being smashed by Brian that day, I didn't have time to take the notebook in the office. The notebook wrote the latest ratio method of sweet and salty fried dough twists that I developed. Before Brian could say anything, the factory director looked at me with an unfriendly look. If Brian hadn't taken the recipe in time this time, now we have been suppressed by the one in the neighboring city. "You are still blaming Brian. Ellie, I don't pay you a salary to let you hang around in the factory. People like you shouldn't stay in the factory. Go away. I'm firing you now." When Brian heard this, a hint of joy flashed in his eyes, but his face remained expressionless. "Factory director, you have forgotten one thing. You have to ask her to return the 1,000 bonus and the small watch you gave her before." The factory director patted his head with disgust, as if he felt dirty just by looking at me. "Yes, that's right. Return the money to Brian. You are not afraid of God's punishment for taking money that does not belong to you." I clenched my fists, and a flame seemed to be burning in my chest, burning me all over. I was so angry that my voice trembled, and the sound was almost squeezed out of my throat. "Okay, I will return it." On the way back, many people in the factory pointed at me. The news had already spread back to the village. The villagers threw rotten eggs on me, saying that I was a disgrace, and asked me to get out of the village. I scanned the faces of these people one by one, and walked home silently. Early the next morning, Nathan accompanied me to call the police. Brian was taken away. He almost killed me by smashing the bench against me. He was suspected of provoking disturbances and was detained for 3 days. I did not accept the settlement, so he was educated in there. Finally, he could not stand it anymore and said he wanted to see me. When I saw Brian again, he looked haggard. I had never seen him look so embarrassed. His stubble had all appeared. His eyes were full of vicissitudes. There were a few white hairs growing in his hair. "You're back too, right?" Seeing that I admitted it generously, surprise flashed in his eyes. Obviously, he did not expect that I would admit it directly. I looked at him leisurely. He was very surprised that I would admit it. "I never thought of hiding it. It was you who did not notice it." He was completely focused on Diana. How could he notice my abnormality? He laughed as if he was in a trance. His expression was hideous, like a devil crawling out of hell. "What do you think? It's all your fault. You ruined my life in my last life, and you're here again in this life. Ellie, you vicious woman. Why do you have to pick on me?" That's it. Veins bulged on his forehead, and he looked like he wanted to rush over and tear me to pieces. My tone was cold, and my attitude was calm. "If you had said that you didn't want to marry me, I wouldn't have forced you to marry me. It was you who put all the blame on me. Besides, in the last life, After Nathan left, Diana was a widow. You could divorce me and marry her, right? If you asked for a divorce from me, I wouldn't have forced you to stay. Why didn't you dare? Let me guess. At that time, my pastry shop was booming. You couldn't do business without my financial support. You wanted my money and Diana, but you couldn't bear to give up your material life, so you didn't dare to file for divorce. You put all the blame on me, right? Seeing that I hit the nail on the head, Brian's face turned pale, and he bit his lips tightly, with cold sweat dripping from his forehead.
No. No.
Looking at his cowardly look, I lost interest, stood up, and was about to leave, then suddenly remembered something. In this era, being taken away by the police was a serious matter. After you were taken away, Diana said that it had nothing to do with you. It was you who had been harassing and pestering her, so you haven't been released until now. It's not just because he smashed my house, it's because the police have started to investigate your case of hooliganism. As soon as he said this, Brian spurted out a mouthful of blood. Brian was detained for another 2 days. He completely collapsed and said that he went to my office and stole my notebook. The police cleared my name. The factory director wanted to come and apologize to me in person and invite me back to the factory, but Nathan refused on my behalf and drove the factory director away. After Brian was released, the first thing he did was look for Diana. As a result, he ran into Diana kissing the man she had a blind date with last time. Brian was completely stimulated and crazy. He couldn't accept that the woman he had been thinking about for 2 lives turned out to be such a piece of trash. He lost his mind. He bought a knife that night and sneaked into the educated youth site to get to know Diana directly. The next day, he was covered in blood and went to turn himself in. On the day Brian was sentenced, I happened to have a wedding banquet with Nathan and got a marriage certificate. It turned out that Nathan had been making money by reselling these days. On the wedding night, he gave me all his assets. I know you are a careful person. You will definitely open a cake shop in the future. You can't open it without money. This money is what I earned recently, and some of it was saved before. It should be enough. If it's not enough, I'll make more. This time, Nathan chose to support my career and didn't follow the old path of the past life. Naturally, he will live with me until old age. We have been in love for 100 years and were discharged from the hospital early. Only then did I piece together the complete course of events from her few words. I swiped my tablet and found that the last hot search had a follow-up. An insider revealed that Brian was married. Diana also went from being an envied love blogger to a mistress that everyone wanted to beat. All major platforms were cyberbullying the two of them. Some people even photoshopped their posthumous photos. Even Nathan was rumored to be Brian's illegitimate child. I noticed that in the contact list, Diana's profile picture turned into a pure black photo, and all the friends circle were deleted. I was a little annoyed. Why didn't I let this pile of trouble go after I fled abroad? After completely losing my patience, I suppressed my anger and scolded. You don't have to blackmail me morally. It's your son who refuses to divorce now, not me. If you are really afraid that Brian will get into an accident, then let him sign the divorce agreement quickly. Ellie, why do you say that? Brian is your husband after all. You won't be after the divorce. I turned off the phone with a snap and threw it on the bed. Grievances surged into my heart like a tide. Why should I give in again and again? The trouble they caused should be dealt with by themselves. No one should drag me into that deformed circle now. Perhaps it was because I had unloaded the burden in my heart that I slept exceptionally well that night. To celebrate my joining the company gave me half a day off. I slept until noon before going to work. However, not long after, a colleague came over and said that there was a homeless man looking for me outside the door. I didn't understand why, but Eric came over worriedly and wanted to go with me. I just walked to the door and saw that familiar figure from behind. It was Brian. I hadn't seen him for many days. He had lost a lot of weight. His cheeks were sunken, there was a dark spot under his eyes, and his hair was messy, as if he hadn't dressed up seriously for a long time. When he saw me, his cloudy eyes brightened up again, but the moment he saw Eric, he became furious. He rushed over and wanted to push Eric away. Get out. Who allowed you to get close to Ellie? Unlike Brian's miserable state, Eric's daily routine was very regular, and he had always maintained a good fitness habit. When he pushed him, Eric didn't even move. I frowned, not understanding why Brian made such a fuss. Brian turned his head away. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked decadent. He walked up to me, lowered his head, and begged, "Ellie, come back with me. We won't get divorced, okay?" I shook my head. "Brian, we're over. You're not only sorry to me, but also to Diana for being like this." "No, it's not over." Brian was anxious. He wanted to come over and hold my hand, but he was stopped by Eric. Eric pushed Brian gently, and he fell to the ground. The ring that I had abandoned on the coffee table fell out and rolled a few times. Brian's eyes became redder. He held the ring and begged me, "Ellie, can you give me another chance?" I still shook my head. "Even if you refuse to sign the divorce agreement, I can also file for divorce. Delay is meaningless in the current situation. Even if it is for Diana and Nathan, just sign the divorce agreement." I turned and left. Brian wanted to catch up, but was stopped by the security guard at the door. He shouted my name desperately behind me, again and again, but I would never look back for him. Later I heard that Diana ran away with all their money. Brian couldn't stand the blow. He was drunk at home all day. He was completely ruined. His childhood friend called me several times and told me about Brian's rotten life. I just listened silently, without any ripples in my heart. A few months later, I received the divorce agreement signed by Brian. Looking at the divorce agreement in my hand, I think my shackles are now unlocked. Everything that happened yesterday is gone with yesterday. I will have a new life in the future.